is that you're not in it alone. You're not in it alone. In fact, to be honest, I think if for us as Christmas, if we really want to make a difference, really want to bring joy to the world, maybe the greatest message we could be is not necessarily the one we speak, but it's in just fleshing out, being incarnate. There's a couple of big terms in Christmas. There's Emmanuel, which is God with us, but there's also the incarnation, which is God in the flesh. And I sit there and think, man, talk about a church making an impact in our community. If we could just, flesh out this message, this single message that God is with you, that you're not alone this Christmas. I mean, think about the people in your life who probably do feel very alone, who are alone in that addiction, who are alone in that failure. What would it look like this Christmas if like Joseph, we responded and we stepped out? And we chose to be a part of the message, allowing God to redeem our mess, to be used to just remind somebody that God hasn't forgotten them. God hasn't lost sight of them. To just sit with someone as they grieve, to just be with someone as they hurt, to just hold someone as they struggle. To remind them, you're not in this alone. Of course, Joseph wasn't the only one in this story dealing with feelings of feeling more than a little bit alone. Mary certainly would have been going through the same emotions. Look at this in Luke chapter 1, verse 26. It says, God sent the angel Gabriel to Nazareth, a village in Galilee, to a virgin named Mary. She was engaged to be married to a man named Joseph, a descendant of the king of David. Again, this is, it's important that you understand that this is all a part of God's plan. He had been, since the beginning of time, he had already thought through this. So often when we see messy circumstances or things don't go the way we think they should go, we can sometimes think that somehow maybe God made a mistake or God had lost sight or this isn't a part of a bigger plan. But the truth is that certainly in this story is that there was purpose to this. There was purpose to this. There was ordained purpose to this. And so it goes on, it says, Gabriel appeared to her and said, greetings, favored woman, the Lord is with you. Greetings, favored woman, the Lord is with you. Confused and disturbed, Mary tried to think what the angel could mean. Don't be afraid, Mary, the angel told her, for you have found favor with God. You will conceive and give birth to a son, and you will name him Jesus. Now I gotta be honest, if I were in Mary's high heel shoes at that time, and I heard an angel showing up, which, by the way, so often I think when we think of angels, we tend to think of like these little chubby kids flying around with wings. But the truth is, angels were fearsome. There's a reason that everyone's afraid when they see an angel in the Bible. I mean, they're warriors, they're fighters. They can be pretty intimidating looking. And listen, if I had heard kind of like Mary, hey, you need to know you're favored. You're highly favored, Mary. I got good news for you, which if I were in her shoes, I'd probably be thinking, man, if this is good news, I'd hate to really be on your bad side, right? Because I'm sure she was reeling at the moment. I mean, think about what this would mean for her. Think of all the thoughts and all the stresses and all the tension and all the fear that was probably going on in her mind. Talk about feeling alone. Alone, as she thought about what this would mean for her. How would what would her parents say? What would the community think of her? What are the people in Nazareth going to say? I mean, this is going to ruin her reputation, she's got to be thinking. And not just that, I'm sure she had to be overwhelmed at just the thought of being a mom. I mean, this was a part of her 5-year or 10-year plan. This wasn't even part of her wedding plans, probably. I mean, I doubt that she was like in elementary school, like, when I grow up, what I want to do is I want to give birth to the Son of God. I doubt that there was any like moment of that. And so here she is, she's overwhelmed. She's not feeling ready for this. I mean, she hasn't even read what to expect when you're expecting. And here all of a sudden, she's being asked to give birth to the Son of God, to be a mom, to raise the Son of God. Again, this was not a part of her plan. This would have been overwhelming. This would have been all-consuming. But here's what you got to know, and I put it in my notes this way, is that while your plans might have changed, you got to understand his purpose never does. While your plans might have changed, you got to know his purpose never does. I don't know if you've ever heard this, but there's a term in journalism called "don't bury the lead." Don't bury the lead, and it is basically it's this ideal that so often journalists, when they write something, it can be really easy to get caught up in sort of the messiness of all the details, all the stuff around it, and that's what they mean when they say don't bury the lead. Don't bury it in all these details, all the sort of the non-essential stuff, to the main ideal, the big big thing you're trying to get across. Now, interesting enough, this works for news. Now, if you're a fiction writer, if you're writing a novel, you wouldn't write in such a way. I mean, you actually want to do the opposite. You actually want to bury the lead. You want to create suspense. You want to, kind of create this drag it out till you get to this climax and this kind of big Patterson twist at the end, right? But again, when you're writing a news story, when you're writing and you're trying to share the truth of events that are in front of you, you don't want to bury the lead. And so journalists, what they do to help them and do that, they do what's known as writing in an inverted pyramid of importance. In other words, what they'll do is they'll take the most important thing of the story, the most important news that you've got to get and they've got to get across to you, and they'll put it right at the top in the first sentence or two, and it kind of just works as this inverted pyramid where it just kind of goes down with each sentence. The importance of that sentence it becomes less and less and less. Still has value, but the big ideal, the main thing they want you to get to know is right up there at top on the first sentence. And listen, and actually, the interesting thing, the reason they actually started to do this was actually came out of the Civil War. Is because oftentimes in the Civil War, as they were trying to report battles, oftentimes these guys, they would get killed and right in the middle of trying to, transcript or write a message to try to get a message out to troops. So if you didn't, if you weren't careful and you buried the lead, you could really get across the wrong message. Just imagine you're in a battle and you lost 20,000 troops, but you won the war. Well, if you put on the lead, we lost 20,000 troops, and you get killed somewhere in the midst of that, how many know that the person on the other end is not going to get the accurate information, is going to respond very differently. And look, I share all that to say is that I think sometimes, if we're not careful in Christmas, we can bury the lead as well. We can bury the lead, we can bury the main point, we can bury the message, we can bury the promise in the circumstances we're going through, in the fears we're going through, in the messiness we're going through, in the family drama we're going through, in the hurry and the busyness and the rush we're going through. And in fact, I love this. I love how the angel actually responds here, because we see the angel, communicating really in that inverted pyramid, right? Going out of his way to not bury the lead. In fact, I love how he opens up this conversation. He says, Mary, you got to know, before any of the details, before what's going to happen, before how this is going to work out, you got to know that you're highly favored. You got to know that God is with you. See, Mary, this may not be in your plans, but you got to know his purpose has never changed. In fact, I put it this way, is that some of us here tonight, we got to understand is that even though the wrapping might be bad, the gift can still be good. You realize that? even though the wrapping might be bad, the gift can still be good. Have you ever gotten a gift that was wrapped terribly and you open it up and you're like, man, this is actually a pretty nice gift, right? And in a lot of ways, that's kind of what the angel's saying there. It's like, look, I realize that there might be some of you in here that when you think of Christmas, the Christmas you're looking at this year, it feels like a gift that's got a lot of tears and it's got a lot of duct tape and it's got, coffee stains all on it. But listen, even though the wrapping might be bad, when you understand that there's a God who's for you and with you, I'm telling you, the gift can still be good. The gift can still be good. See, even though your plans, things might not be working out, they might not have gone the way you planned them to go. Maybe you're facing the loss of a spouse or maybe facing the loss of a job. things you didn't plan on, you need to know his purpose has never changed. In fact, there's a great passage that speaks of this. And in fact, it's a passage that even if you haven't been to church very much, most of us know. It's Jeremiah 29:11, right? For I know the plans I have for you. They're plans for good, not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope. That's Jeremiah 29:11. What the verse we don't oftentimes know quite as well is the verse before and after. In fact, I can guarantee you there's not very many T-shirts around that have Jeremiah 29:10. We love Jeremiah 29:11. Like, hey, I got good stuff in front of you. There's going to be good days in front. It's going to work out. It's going to get better. But we miss the verse in front of it. In verse 10, it says this is what the Lord says, you will be in Babylon for 70 years, but then I will come and do for you all the good things I've promised, and I will bring you home again. Again, talk about bad wrapping paper, right? But there's a reason why we don't print out Jeremiah 29:10 shirts, right? But again, it's this message that listen, just because the wrapping might be bad, might not be what you planned, what you hoped for, what you expected, you need to know that his purpose is still for your good. That as hard as it is, as difficult as it is, as rough as it is, you got to know that we serve a God who says, for those who love the Lord, listen, all things will work for the good of those who love him, right? That's our God. That's our God. And listen, when you can hold on to that, when you can hold on to that promise and knowing that listen, there's a God who's for you. Listen, one of the things you're also going to be reminded is that God has never left you. He's never lost sight of you. In fact, there's a verse after Jeremiah 29:10, verse 13 that I love. It says, if you look for me wholeheartedly, you'll find me. You'll find me. I'm not distant. You might feel alone, but listen, as long as I'm in the picture, you're never truly alone. Which kind of leads me with just a couple kind of quick closing points for you. Because here's the thing, I get the pushback. It's like, okay, that's great. There's a God who's for me, there's a God who's with me, and you know what? If there was an angel like they had to remind me of that, man, it'd be easy for me to hold on to that, right? Like man, that's great. But they had angels. Like what do you do when you don't have an angel that's showing up to remind you that there's a God who's for you and with you? And so just kind of give you a couple, I think 3 things that hopefully will help you to remember really this message of Christmas, that there is a God who's with you and for you. And it's remembering that one, alone is a temporary feeling, rarely a fixed reality. Alone is a temporary feeling, rarely a fixed reality. I think oftentimes in church world, we do a really good job, and I've shared this before, we do a really good job, at teaching people how to talk to God, how to talk with God. But we don't do a very good job ever talking about what do you do with the silence of God. When you're not hearing from him, when it feels like his voice has gone distant or cold. And yet, what I want you to get in that is that you need to understand is that just because you might feel that there's an absence there, is that oftentimes when he feels most absent is oftentimes when he's most present in our lives. In fact, we see this again going back to those intertestamental period, that 400 years. I'm telling you, there had to have been more than a few times where they thought that they'd been totally forgotten. That God was nowhere in the picture, that God had totally abandoned them. And yet the reality is when we look at the mess of the miracle of Christmas, we discover that all through that 400 years, ultimately he was just simply laying the groundwork and setting the stage for the greatest miracle of all. He hadn't gone anywhere. He was right there in the middle of it. And listen, that's so important that we understand that, because I think sometimes we can get so caught up in the feelings of aloneness, with feelings of loneliness, we can lose sight of the facts of God's presence. And so, just kind of a quick little practical way of, how do you remind yourself? How do you bring yourself back to that place of remembering that, listen, God is with me in this? And I think we see it in Psalm 139, verse 7 and 9 through 12. It says, where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me, Your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me and the light become night around me, even in the darkness will not be dark to you. For the night will shine like the day, for the darkness is as light to you. Listen, this is an incredible promise here. And the promise is this, is that you never want to doubt in the dark what God has told you in the light. Never doubt in the dark what God has told you in the light. You think, when the voice grows cold and when it feels silent, you need to remember and you need to shine a light on the things that God has already promised you, or the ways that God has delivered you, or God has pulled you through. In fact, that's what Mary did. At the very end, after she heard all these things, she says, I'm going to take you at your word, this word that never fails. Before she was going into this time of silence, this time of feeling alone, this time of darkness, she shined a light on the promises of God. And in fact, as I was reading this, my mind kind of came to a movie clip. Remember Home Alone? And there's kind of a great passage that kind of speaks to this, or at least a great scene. Why don't you take a look at this?
Merry Christmas. May I sit down? That's my granddaughter up there, the little red-haired girl. She's about your age. You know her?
No.
You live next to me, don't you? You can say hello when you see me. You don't have to be afraid. There's a lot of things going around about me, but none of it's true. Okay? Been a good boy this year?
I think so.
You swear to it?
No.
Yeah, I had a feeling. Well, this is the place to be if you're feeling bad about yourself.
It is?
I think so.
Are you feeling bad about yourself?
No.
I've been kind of a pain lately. I said some things I shouldn't have. I really haven't been too good this year.
Yeah.
I'm kind of upset about it because I really like my family. Even though sometimes I say I don't. Sometimes I even think I don't. Do you get that?
I think so. How you feel about your family is a complicated thing.
Especially with an older brother.
Deep down, you always love them. But you can forget that you love them. And you can hurt them and they can hurt you. And that's not just because you're young. You want to know the real reason why I'm here right now?
Sure.
I came to hear my granddaughter sing. And I can't come and hear her tonight.
You have plans?
No. I'm not welcome.
At church?
Oh, you're always welcome at church. I'm not welcome with my son. Years back, before you and your family moved on the block, I had an argument with my son.
How old is he?
Well, he's grown up. We lost our tempers, and I said I didn't care to see him anymore. He said the same. We haven't spoken to each other since.
If you miss him, why don't you call him?
I'm afraid if I call him, he won't talk to me.
How do you know?
I don't know. I'm just afraid he won't.
No offense, but aren't you a little old to be afraid?
You can be a little old for a lot of things. You're never too old to be afraid.
That's true. I've always been afraid of our basement. It's dark, there's weird stuff down there, and it smells funny, that sort of thing. It's bothered me for years.
The basements are like that.
Then I made myself go down there to do some laundry, and I found out it's not so bad. All this time I've been worrying about it, but if you turn on the lights, it's no big deal.
What's your point?
My point is, you should call your son.
What if he won't talk to me?
At least you'll know. Then you could stop worrying about it. and you won't have to be afraid anymore. I don't care how mad I was, I'd talk to my dad, especially around the holidays.
I don't know.
Just give it a shot, for your granddaughter anyway. I'm sure she misses you, and the presents.
I sent her a check.
Wish my grandparents did that. They always send me clothes. Last year I got a sweater with a big bird knitted on it.
Oh, that's nice.
Not for a guy in the 2nd grade. You can get beat up for wearing something like that.
Oh?
Yeah, I have a friend who got nailed because there was a rumor he wore dinosaur pajamas.
You better run along home where you belong. You think about what I said, all right?
Okay,
It's nice talking to you.
nice talking to you. What about you?
Me?
Yeah, you and your son.
We'll see what happens. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.